Call the meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States.
One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Pierce,
Present.
Mason,
Here.
Trustee Peterson,
Present.
Trustee Bluthart,
Here.
Trustee Berman,
Here.
Trustee Dominiac,
Here.
Mayor Gardner.
Present. We have one trustee attending remotely today, which is Trustee Pierce, who's on Zoom. First item on the agenda is the mayoral reports. In a moment, we're going to do a promotion of Jacob Marsh to sergeant. First, a couple of just quick announcements. I want to thank everybody for their hard work on all the Trick or Treat Harvest Fest last weekend. I want to acknowledge the Teamster Horsemen who are here tonight, who also had a group of people volunteering at that event, so we appreciate that. Thank you very much. I also want to announce again, unfortunately, condolences to the Haley family and Trustee Mary Peterson on the passing of her older sister Betty. So again, send our condolences to you and the family.
Thank you.
So without further ado, I believe Chief Gutchow will do the promotion of Officer Marsh to sergeant.
Good evening. I'm going to ask Jake and his girlfriend Lisa to step up, the kids if they'd like. They didn't tell you this beforehand, did they?
Yeah.
We want you in front of everybody, Lisa. We know you love this. All right.
This will be on you.
Thank you, Mayor and Board of Trustees. As I've mentioned on some prior occasions, as chief, one of my most significant responsibilities is to work to identify and seek to professionally develop the next generation of leaders within the department. Today, I come before you to promote an individual who has demonstrated their strong leadership abilities and consistently encouraged and modeled our primary mission of serving our community with pride and integrity. It is my privilege this evening to come before you to promote Officer Jacob Marsh to the rank of sergeant. Officer Marsh joined the department in December of 2012 and has served in several essential capacities, including being an acting officer in charge and a field training officer. Over the last 10 years, I've had the privilege to watch Officer Marsh mature and grow into the professional police officer who stands before you this evening. Having watched him prepare for this opportunity, I am confident he is ready to take on the challenges of being a police sergeant, a position that I regard as the most critical within the department. Through conversations I've had with him leading up to this evening, I know that as a frontline supervisor, he very much looks forward to the opportunity to mentor and coach other officers to help them achieve their full potential. Officer Marsh grew up in Richmond and holds a bachelor's degree in biology from Northern Illinois University. He is joined this evening by his mother, Monica, father Rich, his girlfriend Lisa, and their children Adelaide and Brianna. Also in attendance are several members of Lisa's family. At this time, I respectfully ask the clerk to swear Officer Marsh in as Amy Axel, Sergeant.
I, Jacob Marsh, having been appointed as sergeant of the military Antioch Police Department in the county of Lake, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the state of Illinois, and I will faithfully discharge the duties of sergeant to the best of my ability.
I will. Thank you. A little blood, okay.
As your chance, wakes up. All right.
All right, thank you. We have a list of citizens who wish to address the board. If there's anybody else that wishes to sign up, otherwise I will pass the list to the clerk to help. Oh, yeah. Thank you. Thanks for coming. Yeah, you can read it while it's.
Procedure for public comment at board meetings. The opportunity to speak to the board is provided for members of the public who have a comment to make about the business of the board. The board appreciates hearing from stakeholders and values your thoughts and questions. The board strives to make the best decisions for the village, and public input is very helpful. The board must protect the civility and decorum of this meeting. Please be respectful for the duties of the board and the democratic process in your comments tonight. Please state your name and address and address your comments to the board. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Please be factual and courteous, and the board requests that you not make statements that are personally disrespectful or condescending to members of the board or staff. To the extent multiple speakers are addressing a single issue, the mayor or chair of the meeting reserves the right to limit the number of speakers making public comment of a repetitive nature and or limit the amount of time for public comment. The board does not respond to comments or attempt to answer questions during the public comment period. On the first person.
Yeah. Lori's got it on that computer.
The first public comment we have is Mr. John Draper.
John Draper, I live at 1061 Victoria Street. And I've been here before about our parking problems up and down our street since you guys made it legal to park up and down it. Been that way for a year. It is not working out. You get cars that park, they're not paying attention to the times on the sign. They park there Monday through Friday, all cars. And then if someone parks across from one, there is no way you guys get an emergency vehicle down the road. You barely get a car between. I took a picture of the signs that they put up, and it's really confusing to people. I can show it to one of you.
Should it? Sure. Is it okay to pass the phone?
Yeah.
Okay.
The green signs, where they put up for parking on it, and then they put a no parking sign because of the intersection of Victoria and Hardin. People parked there, and they're like, where do we park? That didn't really help anything. But, I know there's been accidents at like 173 somewhere right in this area where they reroute traffic down our street. And when the cars are parked there, if the semis didn't reroute, they'll never make it down there. They have a hard time turning the corner if there's a car parked anywhere near the intersection. So it's just not working out.
Thank you for your comments, and just for the record, if you want, you would send the picture to the clerk to put in the minutes for the meeting. That would be helpful. All right. Thank you.
Lucille Kessler.
My name is Lucille Kessler. I live in Antioch, Illinois, and I don't believe in this ticket tax for the theater or for any private business.
Thank you.
Christine Asbrook.
You just stepped out there, big call, should be right back.
Michael Mara.
So Michael Mara, Antioch resident. I'm here again to talk about the ticket tax. I certainly don't agree with it. I don't believe that a private sale between two parties should involve the village at any aspect. And one thing about the ticket tax, let's go back and remember that when the that in the original purchase, the current owner received $200,000 in donations, received additional ticket tax back then, and should now ask basically the same residents, the same families, to pay even more ticket tax, more funds for the benefit of the current owner to once again charge, our residents and anybody else who might come here, any type of taxation is just wrong. The village should not be a third party to this purchase or sale in any way.
Thank you.
Not yet. And I didn't put my name down, but I meant to put my name down.
Yeah, you can put if you want to be added to the list, yes, while we're still in public comments.
Hi, Linda Monty, Antioch, Illinois. I just wanted to reiterate some of the things we've already talked about, was reiterating specificity of the ticket tax agreement. And because of the specificity of it, the ticket tax should not be approved for the qualifications other than what was specified. And it's also right now for the personal gain of the seller of the private business. Even if there's been changes made to this agreement, there is no way there could have been enough due diligence done on the qualifications. And there was also a financial aspect to it where there was $100,000 down. And so if there's any changes made, it seems to me there should be a little bit more time given to it, but I really don't believe that there should be a ticket tax for a private business in Antioch as well, and no personal gain for the seller of that business. Thank you.
Thank you.
Christine?
All right, thank you for your public comments. The next items on the agenda are the consent agenda items. There are 2 items. Are there any requests for removal of either of those items? If not, motion in a second, please. So moved.
Second.
Motion trustee Bluthart, second trustee Dominiac, roll call.
Pierce?
Aye.
Yes.
Peterson?
Yes.
Luther?
Yes.
Berman?
Yes.
Minnick?
Yes.
6 voting yes, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is the regular business is presentation on water system analysis by HR Green. Mr. Tim Hartnett from HR Green is present, as well as Administrator Kine to discuss this item.
Thank you, Your Honor. Last year, when we had an issue with well 5, it caused us to start thinking about the water system as a whole. We budgeted to do a water system analysis with the primary goal to understand what it means for us to have well 5 offline, kind of understand our water system, how it operates in general. So we budgeted for it, and HR Green has done an analysis, and we will present that. Tim Hartnett from HR Green is going to present that analysis to you.
Thank you. I don't know if many of you remember, but back in the early 2000s, we did a water system evaluation and analysis. We also completed a water model that is still used today. There was development and people asked about flows and pressures at a certain location. We can certainly do that. We've also shared that data with emergency services and fire protection group for insurance purposes. So again, this was we revisited the infrastructure, your wells, your storage, working with your team, your staff. We captured the last 2 years of information and data. System currently serves 14,175 customers, which is a mix of businesses, commercial, industrial, residential. So it's just kind of a standard procedure. So again, if you're having a hard time sleeping, I'd be happy to go through every calculation and things, but the bottom line is, and I also added an exhibit, which I did submit electronically, so you can have that, but I thought it would help you understand when we talk about west and east, the larger area in orange or tan or whatever color is the original Antioch, let's call that, the original downtown area. The blue area was created again in the late 90s, planned for, and actually started to build and head out towards Walmart. And then ultimately Clublands and New Haven came along and then added 3 wells, 1 million gallon storage in the park out there. And then several years later, IDI came into play and they put a elevated water tower that you see out there today. So the system is kind of set up in just 2 different zones. So that's what we meant by west and east zone. So during our analysis, you analyze all of your wells and the information is there on the production as well. And we use that to measure that against the standards which the EPA uses to see if you're meeting your demands or exceeding. And so the good news is that overall you are exceeding your firm supply. You can also provide with your storage over 3,500 gallons a minute for over 3 hours, which is pretty incredible amount of fire protection. The reason we chose that number is because that's what schools require if they're sprinklered. And believe it or not, a school was planned out in front of Clublands way back in the day. And so that's what kind of drove some of the design criteria for this system. There is a booster station that you see there, which is underneath the elevated tank by the Dodge dealer. That was put in because the overall system was not done in time. So the original system pushed water out to the east. Just thought I'd give you a quick history lesson. But the good news is that your system has plenty of storage. You have your wells are provide the demands that we currently have. And again, as Jim stated, when well number 5 exceeded iron, it just brought it to light. What happens if well number 5 gets taken out? Well, it's out right now. It's in emergency mode. And when you do your calculations, you take your largest producing well out of service, just as a conservative approach. And so that has already been taken out for calculation purposes, but that is one of our highest producing wells that we have in the village. And so it's well worth what we're also embarking on right now is we're meeting with well drillers to analyze if through chemical treatment, heavy chlorination, cleaning the equipment, the pumps, seeing if that treatment can provide and get us below the maximum limits. We will obtain pricing budgets to do that, to see if that's worth. We believe it's well worth that cost. The other evaluation we're working on well 5, we're working with equipment manufacturers right now to see what it would take to provide iron removal equipment, a building to house that equipment, and all of the equipment infrastructure and building required to house that. And that would be done at that existing location. So we will provide costs and an analysis of what that entails. And then the third part of our analysis for well 5 will be, you could leave it in emergency mode, which is completely allowable by EPA. But if you ever need it, you turn it on, you use it, and then you turn it back off and you continue to test. We will be also researching our water study way back in the early 2000s spoke about that if and when development occurred near North Avenue and Nelson or North Avenue and Tiffany in those areas, when we were working with those developers, we were going to require them to provide elevated storage, a well, and a well house. And then development went away. So that didn't mean that our planning shouldn't go away. It's not really needed today. So what does this report mean? It means we should start the planning process, get some ideas, some budgets, some areas pulled together, so that in 3, 4, 5 years or beyond, if development comes back, if our demands go up, we will have a plan in place. And whether the village wants to fund some of these improvements, or if and when development occurs, you can hand them these documents and say, part of your development with your densities and your demands, we need to add this to the system, as we've done. That's what we did with Newman. That's what we did with all the developers, Walmart, everyone. They all paid for the booster stations, the mains, for the towers, the wells. IDI paid for the tower. So that's the strategy we're going to continue. Happy to answer any questions. And again, you have this electronically, and then I sent this over today because I tend to work better off a map or an exhibit so you can kind of see where all the wells are and where your towers are.
Questions or comments from the side? I know we have trustee Pierce online. Trustee Pierce, do you have any questions or comments?
Well, I was rather pleased to see this, and I think it's a good step to always plan for our water need. You did mention well 5 and possible viewing how much it would take to remove the iron out of there. Is there possible to remove the iron out of all the wells so our system cleans up a little bit?
We can certainly look into that. We're going to be meeting with your operators and Dennis and Jim to just go over kind of routine maintenance and upkeep and check and see when those types of process or procedures have been done. We'll also visit with the well drillers to see if that's if the spend is worth the benefit. But well 5 is the only one that really is an exceeding sub iron, but we certainly can look into it.
Well, if you're washing your whites at home in Antioch, you know that there's a lot of iron in the water. And if you watch them do the maintenance on the towers when they're draining them, they just run a river of rust when they clean the towers out. So I think we should be looking into that. So I'm glad we're working on these things. Thank you.
Thank you, trustee Pierce. Trustee Mason?
Is this with coordination with the fire department, ISO, bringing that ISO code down?
Yes, we provided this map. We provided the testing. It was when Mr. Lee Shannon was here. We provided that to him so that the fire department could share that information. And then even the residents could share that information with their insurance companies if there's fire hydrants that provide fire protection.
Because everybody's going to automatic ISO ratings. They think they're coming up to renew their ISO coatings. So
Well, again, we have great information if they'd like it. I've shared this similar type of information with other fire districts all over the Chicagoland area.
I don't know, do we automatically share that with chief over there?
I don't know.
Anytime he wants it.
I don't know if he knows it's available though.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, Ross has a wonderful GIS system. Your staff here has a great GIS with every single water main size, location. He even has the water model mapping to show pressures. It's color coded dots which signify the type of pressure flow that can be achieved on every single line segment in your community. So, thank you.
Trustee Peterson?
I'm very happy that we're doing this right now too. It'll answer a lot of questions and the information is pretty valuable going forward. So I'm happy we're doing it.
Tim, do you know, are there any grant opportunities for anything like along these lines that you're aware of?
Specific grants, no, but as always, the SRF loan program is always available with millions of dollars, and it's considered a low interest loan. So some communities will utilize that funding source. It's a lot of paperwork, a lot of administrative costs. Larger communities find value in it. The small to medium-sized communities find that the amount of time and money that they're going to spend on bonding and on all the paperwork, they could probably go to a local bank and get a better interest rate
Thank you. Trustee Luther? No comment. Trustee Berman?
No comment.
I know we're on the same page. Trustee Dominiac?
I don't even know what I'm.
I know, yeah.
I think it's great that we're exceeding the expectations of the demand. But I think we also, as a board, need to take some time to take another look at whether or not you want to remain dependent on wells, or if we want to look at tapping into Lake Michigan water. I have asked previously in the other administration for a more definition around how long our allocation is, and I've never received that answer. So it would be great if we could just get some more information about whether or not there's a time limit on that allocation, and if there is, then it probably would accelerate a discussion. I know there's a lot of different opinions on this, but I think if we're gonna start spending money on infrastructure for wells, we shouldn't do that in a vacuum without readdressing the Lake Michigan opportunity.
Currently working with Jim and Dennis. Every year you're required to report to the DNR on your Lake Michigan allocation, what you're doing, what you've done. You've checked all the boxes in the first several years of ordinances, updates, water saving devices, education, etc. We've even done, I don't know, again, if people realize, we assisted your team here with the Lake Michigan water alternative study.
Right.
So that is available. The only thing you got to do there is you just revisit with all the potential partners and see if those prices per gallon are still in effect. And then, yeah, we also evaluated, I don't know if anyone recalls, is what would it take for the village of Antioch to improve their system to Lake Michigan water quality? And that was a tremendously large number.
That was a large number. That's actually, I remember that. I was on the board. I don't know if anybody else was, but I know it's a big ticket item regardless of whether we go to Lake Michigan water or we do what you just said. But I think because of the board has changed, it's encouraging to know that you've been working on what we need to do, but it sounds like we haven't done much since. So, Your Honor, perhaps that's a topic for a future COW or strict quarterly meeting.
It is closer to you now than when those studies were done at San Luis Lake Villa. So there are other options, and I do know Lake County Public Works has contacted Jim about getting back together, and
Great.
there seems to be more allocation available since the larger corporations are moving away or changing the way they're doing business. And so they seem more friendly to say now they have water at Lake County Public Works.
Good.
Whereas we've been told, we got some, we don't, we got some, we don't. So Jim and I have been through that dance in Venice for many years. Now it seems like maybe there is a chance for them to chat with us.
That's
Yeah.
terrific. Yeah, I think, again, I'm not saying we can make a decision right now, but I know there was also a study about the watershed and, you know, the estimates of how long it's gonna last. So it may not affect the people in this room, but grandchildren, great grandchildren. Thank you.
All right, thank you. No other comments? Thank you for your presentation. Thank you. Next item on the regular business is consideration and approval of payments of accounts payable as prepared by staff in the amount of $536,076.21. There a motion in the second. Motion trustee Dominiac,
Second.
second trustee Peterson. Any discussion?
Yes, Your Honor.
Trustee Pierce.
There's two items on there. One is a $11,000 payment for truck fees during a strike or something. I was wondering if the administrator could explain that. And there's also a $250,000 payment for an outbuilding Sequoia capital improvement project.
Yeah, the larger amount, the $200,000 that went to Lake County was our match to the
Okay.
grant for the park, which we was stipulated in the intergovernmental agreement and grant agreement. So it was due, or it's going to be due here in November. So that's why that's on there. And the 11,000 for Orvine was a requested change for additional monies they had to spend while there were a strike going on affecting gravel materials. Earlier this summer, it affected them and their pricing. it came in a little bit late. So I think it was actually an $18,000 request and I negotiated it to 11. Just out of fairness to the contractor, I didn't feel it was fair that they were gonna eat that cost. I also didn't think it was fair for the village. That the request came in a little bit late either. So that was a negotiated item between myself and Orvine, the contractor that removed the soil across the street here.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate the explanation.
Thank you. Any other questions regarding this item? Roll call, please.
Pierce,
Aye.
Mason,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Luther,
Yes.
Berman,
Yes.
Minnick,
Yes,
6 voting yes, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is consideration and approval of an ordinance approving a ticket sales tax rebate agreement, ordinance number 22-09-53. This is a little bit,
could we, before we do a motion, get some?
yeah, that's what I'm gonna get some background, which is a little bit, there's technically 3 options here, so I'll let Attorney Vasselli explain what is being presented tonight.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, ladies and gentlemen of the board, members of the public. There are 3 iterations of this agreement or drafts or versions of this agreement. The major changes, in fact, the exclusive changes are in section 14.4 of the agreement, which you will find on approximately page 12, between 11 and 13, but 12 on the drafts, which is approximately page 52 of 90 for iteration A. The first iteration, iteration A, is a right of first offer. The right of first offer, in sum, would require the buyer to provide notice and an opportunity to purchase to the village of the Antioch Theater at an appraised value. And the village would then make a determination whether it wishes to purchase it or not. Essentially, they want to sell, they have to give the village the first opportunity to purchase. Iteration B or version B is a right of first refusal, which means that at any time during the term of the agreement, the buyer, in response to a bona fide written or offer to purchase all or part of its interest in the Antioch Theater from a third party, desires to sell or otherwise dispose of any interest, defaults on any covenant or obligation, a loan document or other lending document, or remains closed for an extended period of time, 20 days, becomes a triggering event. Then buyer provides notice of the triggering event. Then the village has 14 days, reduced from 30, to provide the buyer the village's notification of intent on how it wishes to proceed, on which terms is set forth in the triggering event notice. This also comes with a sunset provision, which requires this right of first refusal to cease, terminate, and to be held for naught the first day after the 10th anniversary of the effective date of the agreement. So it's 10 years, and essentially the day after the 10th anniversary, it becomes null and void. Either one of these 2 provisions previously discussed can be waived. Iteration C has nothing. It states, and you will see, and I don't know what page it's on, but it's approximately page 11 or 12 of that version of the agreement. I believe it says intentionally omitted, which means that there is no right of first offer or right of first refusal in there. There is no post-closing of the agreement relief for the village on an offer or a right of first refusal. Those are the 3 different iterations. Mr. Chair, is there anything else you want me to add?
No, not specifically. I'm gonna just, before we move on to the motions, you get a chance for a lawyer to try and explain your legalese.
I will not. I can sum it down. No, I can break it down to like, yeah. Okay, so
Break it down, yeah.
right, I can put it in English.
Yes.
In iteration A, it's an offer. So if they decide that they want to sell, they give us notice, we have the right to buy it. There's an appraisal attached, so we know what essentially the price would be. Iteration B is a right of first refusal. And that is if they get an offer or are in default, or cannot make their loan payments, essentially, we have the right to come in and purchase on any offer or make up the balance, the deficiency. And iteration C is the easiest. There is no such offer. It's just blank. You essentially have the agreement, but there's no post-closing relief for us to step in, for the village to step in and purchase. Is that more English?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. So we have, is there a motion on this matter from any of the trustees?
I move to approve option B,
We have a motion on the floor from trustee Dominiac to
to purchase with the right of first, or, to pass with right of first refusal,
waiving the second reading.
waiving the second reading.
All right, so I have a motion from trustee Dominiac with option B waiving the second reading. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second trustee Peterson. Discussion. Trustee Pierce.
Yes, Your Honor, on option B, if the attorney could explain a little bit more about the post-closure, how that works. He was mentioning a 10-year closure.
So that is yes, okay. That's a sunset provision. It's a good idea. It was suggested by the mayor. And essentially that means that if this goes for 10 years, it just divests, it sunsets. You can't exercise that option anymore. The right of first refusal goes away on the first day after the 10th year after this document is signed.
Okay. When does it define that the tax expires or is no longer in place?
Trustee Pierce, while he is looking for that, all in addition, on either of these options, well, I guess we're just talking about option B. The village can always waive their right of first refusal at any time, even in advance of like if an offer came in. So there is always that right to waive that prior to the 10-year period, or if there was an offer.
Yeah, I just have to pull that up, trustee.
Okay.
Your Honor,
Yep, trustee Peterson.
while we're waiting for this, could Jim kind of come and explain a little bit more about why there can't just be, you add $1 to the ticket?
Yes.
Or why does it have to be a tax?
And before he starts, I do have, after the attorney determines the answer to my second
Sure.
question, I do have a third question.
Sure.
So the way I understand the ticket tax rebate is it is not a loan. It is not a grant. It is a pass-through cost to the village. There's no financial impact to the village. If they collect $20 in taxes, we return 20. If they collect 2,000, we return 2,000. Way I understand it, it's a maneuver for them to be slightly more profitable by using the tax that will not be, that the studios will not take a cut of. They take a cut of the ticket price. So if they charged $2 extra on a ticket, the studios will take a percentage of that. This is a maneuver to take that extra $2, call it a tax, and return it to them via the rebate agreement so that it makes the operation or the business that much more profitable. So it's a way for us to help out. Again, it's a pass-through, doesn't cost us any money. I know there was some alluding to what happened years ago. That was a loan. That was completely different. So this is not what we did before. This is totally different. And again, financially neutral to us, but it helps this business. Did I get that right, Tim?
Yes, can I just?
He decides.
Yeah, this is relevant to the discussion. Yes, please.
Mr. Crumb's absolutely right. The studios on average take about 60% of the ticket price is a commission. So prices will go up. They used to be $8, now it's $5. Needs to go back up. So if it's raised to $8, that 60% of the $3 increase will go to the studios. So this is, it's not just necessarily for this buyer or any operator, this is a move strategically for the long-term financial health of the theater. In order to assure its financial stability, to have a more efficient way of capturing additional revenue without having to have a 60% commission on any raise.
Did you say any operator? Whoever.
On, that's in public comment, so, okay, so,
That address it. Any other questions?
all right, any other questions? Well, Attorney Vasselli, I think we have a partial answer for your trustee Pierce. So we'll go back to your initial question about the term of the agreements.
The term of the agreement is set forth in ordinance, or the term of the tax is what you asked, trustee Pierce.
Correct.
Ordinance 220528 passed on June 22nd of this year states that the tax imposed by this ordinance shall begin on July the 1st, 2022 and continue in effect until December 31, 2032. Obviously, that's subject to amendment by this board or future boards.
So even if they have like stellar attendance and they capture all the money to pay off the loan from the buyer to the seller, the tax can remain in effect until 2032?
Yeah, I mean, that's the ordinance. Again, the board can waive the tax. It can enlarge the time period for the tax. It can compress the time period for the tax. Right now, pursuant to the ordinance that was passed on June 22nd of this year, it expires on New Year's Eve on 2032.
Can we amend this ordinance here to state that the tax is only in effect until the loan is paid off?
We could, yes, we could look at language, and let's look at page 6, section 4.2.
Page in the packet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's
It's gonna be 3 pages in the pack, but under, I'll just go to
46.
And it reads under 4.2, the buyer shall be entitled to receive the subsequent payments of the initial payment provided. Romanet 2, the owner or a lender is financing the purchase of the property and has not been paid in full for the property. So is that what you're referencing, trustee Pierce? That the loan has been discharged?
Well, I'm prepared to vote yes on this tonight, but I am very concerned if they pay off their loan early and we continue to allow them to collect the tax.
Sure. And trustee Pierce, I'll also add that I do see in this on page 54, there is a term section that says this agreement shall remain in effect beyond the payment period for the purposes of audit and final accounting. Once such final accounting is completed and any remaining monies to be paid pursuant to the agreement are paid, this agreement shall automatically expire. And I think what you're looking at, and I agree, is that there should be similar language in the tax agreements.
And I agree.
Okay, so I'm going to continue to go around with questions because
I had one more question.
Yep, go ahead.
I just wanted to be clear with the attorney that this tax is not imposed on the residents of Antioch. It's being imposed upon those people who desire to go see a movie at the theater.
It's the privilege of use, yes, pursuant to Illinois law as an inducement and a tax generating vehicle. We can tax tickets such as this. It is for what they would say in academic circles, the privilege of attending the theater in the village. It could be, I do not live in Antioch. If I went to go see the 7 o'clock showing of Black Adam or Halloween Ends, I would pay it as a user of that privilege to have it here.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
Trustee Mason?
We had this last week, we were gonna vote on, and this got canned, and we went to this. So I guess it'd be a point of, why do we can this one, this agreement, move to this agreement? And I got two agreements in the packet. So are the two agreements the same agreement, or is there different language in the two agreements?
Yeah, I thought I explained that. I guess I did not do a very good job of that. If you look on the request for board action, it says that there are 3 different iterations of the agreement. And I thought that I said, and I must be mistaken, I apologize, that the only changes to those provisions are under section, I believe, 14.4, which I believe is about page 52 of the agreement on iteration A or draft A. And I apologize again, I may have that number wrong, but I thought that I explained that there were essentially, not even essentially, the provisions of save section 14.4 were the same in all 3 iterations of this agreement.
But the language is changed from this agreement to this agreement.
I really don't know what, when you say this agreement,
Well, it says, I'll give you a line, whereas corporate authorities have received financial records to enhance your proposed business plan of the buyer. We have not received that.
actually, sir, we said that we were striking that at the last board meeting.
Yes, we do.
I must have missed that.
No, we did, yeah, and I'm not being flip, we said so we were taking that out at the last board meeting.
Okay. So the other question is, when this comes up, is there something else we can call this? Because when you put a tax on social media, it's gonna be this group imposed a tax on a 7-year-old. Is there another word we can use than a tax? That's the problem I have with this, the word tax.
The tax has already been approved.
Right,
You can call it a rebate agreement.
We're not discussing the tax,
I
we're
understand.
discussing the.
I'm asking the attorney. Well, you're the
So,
attorney.
so I think, yeah, so let Jimmy answer, but I think the term rebate comes out.
Right. So that's a good question, trustee, and I understand your residence. The statute talks about what we can tax, what we can impose, and it uses the word tax as such for just a means of legal compliance. I do like the word tax. I know that it has somewhat bad connotations. And let me say something. A rose by any other name smells as sweet, right? That it's going to be a charge for the generation of revenue that goes on for the privileges as stated before pursuant to the Illinois Municipal Code. And it's for those privileges, just like any other tax. Again, tax is a word we don't like because we don't like to be taxed. But it is there for a revenue generating issue as provided for in the municipal code.
And to go down this road, then we open Pandora's box for other business to say, you did it for this guy, why not do it for me? That's Pandora's box.
And I understand that, trustee, and this village has been successful in many instances in providing different subsidies for private business owners in the village. I believe the Rivalry Ale House is an example of a place that really probably would not have financially survived, but for the fact of the money, the seed money, let's say, that came in there, incentive, the subsidy. I also, I was looking at some earlier today, but I know that we have done this before, and we have had provisions like this that have gone on them before, where there have been clawback provisions. So if you give your money and we give an incentive and they don't stay in business, the money actually comes back to the village. So there is, let's say, policy precedent for the village to engage in a covenant, an agreement, on terms such as 14.4 under the version that's on the floor today, or right now, version B. Okay, trustee Pierce, I have not forgotten about you. If we want to look at page 6 of your agreements, which, and again, I am under version A, which is not on the floor, but they are similar provisions. If you look, the conditions precedent to initial payment is the owner is financing the purchase of the property and business assets and has not been paid in full for the property. And then we have additional conditions precedent to payment, which talks about the, as I said before, Romanet 2, page 6, In your packet, it's page 46 of 90, that the owner or lender is financing the purchase of the property and has not been paid in full for the property. This ties back to section 3.1, which same page, page 45 to 46 on your packet, page 6 on the agreement, that talks about the owner shall enter into an agreement, that discusses the owner shall enter into an agreement acceptable to the owner and the buyer where it agrees to sell and transfer title, real property and business assets to the Antioch Theater to the buyer upon the buyer's performance of all terms of such agreement. So those provisions are all conditions precedent to payment. Obviously, the discharge of the debt would stop the payment cycle.
And that we could track, and since you readdressed me, I'm gonna just ask one more question. On page 7, it discusses how they provide us a monthly income or status report or auditing report, so that we could track the amount that they're collecting from us and come up with an awareness of when that term should end.
Correct. And again, calling your attention to page 7, which I believe is page 47, 47, 48 in your packets. Another village's obligation to pay the buyer any rebate for a month is conditioned upon Romanet 3, the buyer having an obligation under a valid written agreement to make periodic loan payments to the owner, and a written agreement is in effect during the payment period. Again, our obligation to rebate is discharged when the loan agreement is discharged. It is conditioned on the buyer and the now owner, defined as the owner in the agreement, having an obligation of an agreement governing their transaction. If that makes sense, trustee. I'm trying not to over lawyer this, I apologize, but it is somewhat of a complicated agreement with multiple parties, tax streams, and payment streams.
You were doing well until you started talking about streams.
Well, just to the last point, because I'm, I want a theater, been here my whole life, under a theater the whole time. But under page 46, under the insurance clause, why can't we make that an automatic? Why do we get seems like when we put these things together, we always chase people for compliance of insurance.
Trustee, good point. I will, if the board passes this agreement or a different iteration thereof, I will immediately issue with the transmission a demand that there is insurance and those parameters for the insurance, naming the village as an additional insured.
Yeah, that should be an automatic.
Yeah.
Once a year, it's in the policy, it's automatically signed.
All right, thank you. Trustee Peterson.
I want the theater as well. I've been here all my life too. And I've enjoyed that theater my entire life. So I drive through other communities and see their theaters shuttered and boarded up. They're blighted areas. This is right downtown. It's right in the business district. It's beautiful. A beautiful new marquee. I'd hate to see it shuttered. If the village can help with this, I think we have an obligation to do so. And I want to ask Jim Kine to come up one more time. Is there a chance that we could do some type of ticket tax or rebate or whatever with a restaurant or a clothing store or a liquor store or anything like that?
Only to the extent that the state statute allows us under a non-home rule status. We are not home rule, so if another business were to show up and say, I sell shoes and I want you to put an extra percentage on shoes, I would have to say, no, we're not allowed to do that, to add additional sales taxes, so long as the state statute prohibits us to do so. So I don't know of every single state statute, but by and large part, no, this is a unique situation.
It's a unique situation, yes.
Yes, we are allowed to somehow tax a theater or an entertainment venue with a ticket tax, but we are not allowed to create many taxes as a rule of thumb, as a not all will be.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have, Your Honor.
Thank you. Trustee Luther?
Oh, I was gonna pull up my notes when we all discussed these issues months ago when we approved these the first time. But I don't feel like it's me. We all agreed that incentives are necessary for our businesses in town. To some extent, we agreed that we wanted to keep the theater open. We passed the village ticket tax for that theater. We passed an agreement that was going to the buyer at the time. That agreement is now up for amending due to the ownership changing. That's what we're talking about here. The ticket tax is in place. The only thing we're really negotiating or talking about this evening should be the rebate agreement on that tax. And whether or not we're going to amend it to the new owner, and then in turn, we're putting in possibly a new, some new information regarding right of refusal. But I think we're all on the same page. We've already passed the ticket tax. So I don't think, I think we keep rehashing that, like we're gonna change that. And to me, this is a real simple thing of, let's pass this agreement. Let's get this done so the theater stays open. This incentive is, we agreed to a while ago. The name might have changed, but it's the same incentive we all discussed. And I think we just need to move forward. We want the theater to succeed. We want it to be in town. And this is our way of doing an incentive to them without costing us really anything other than our time in discussing it. Because at the end of the day, if people don't go to that theater, they don't get any money back from this ticket tax, sales tax. This isn't coming out of our revenues, coming out of people that use the theater. It's really a use tax. And those people are, instead of paying $1 or $2 more for a ticket, that goes to the main theater and movie distributors, it's going back to the owner of the business so that he can run it and maintain it and keep that operational in our village. So I just hope that we'll all support this and get this done and we can move forward.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, you may.
Trustee, all good points. I just want to clarify one thing. And again, page 46, 45, 46 on exhibit on draft A, and which would be page 6 on the paper copy of the agreement or the actual agreement, that there is actually a condition precedent that the owner and the buyer enter into an agreement, a standalone agreement, separate and distinct from this, that allows and governs the transfer of title, real property, and business assets to the Antioch Theater to the buyer upon buyer's performance of all terms in that agreement. So it's not that there is another agreement that's being amended. There can't be an agreement for this, meaning the rebate agreement, without an underlying agreement between the current owner of the theater and a buyer. So they can't have okay. I don't want to make it sound like it's an amendment of an agreement. It just can't exist because we wouldn't have an agreement out there when the owner, current owner, doesn't want to sell to someone because there would be no reason to have such an agreement.
No, I agree.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Berman?
Kind of torn with this. I've made it clear in the past that, the theater means a lot. To me, I know it means a lot to everybody else. But having this extra time to think about all of this, I understand that as a village, we wanna make sure that our business district continues on and strong. And by doing that, by helping out the theater, that would accomplish that. But I feel that there is not just this instance, but there's been kind of a pattern of this pressure placed on the village to save the theater. And I don't, well, it is, I guess I shouldn't say it is a responsibility of the village, but then it really technically is not. I'm having a very difficult time with this. I don't know. The village cannot be there every single time that a business is, placed in a tight situation. This whole situation altogether has kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And I don't know if I'm comfortable with this anymore.
Thank you, trustee Dominiac.
Thank you, Your Honor. I don't really have any questions, but I've been giving this a lot of thought, particularly since we started this journey on January 26th of this year. And it took until June before we finally came to an agreement on a tax ordinance as well as a rebate. And that was largely because of the concern that this board had about the village being the lender. I think it's important for everyone who may not have been part of the discussion about the theater 7 years ago or 8 years ago. But at the time in 2014, I'm just going to do a little history. I think Tim, you mentioned Tim's gone, that he was going to give some history. Mr. Downey paid $75,000 for the theater in 2014. And yes, it's true that there was a Kickstarter program that raised $110,000. And it's true that the village gave him a $200,000 loan, which was repaid through ticket tax. But what you may not be aware of is the fact that Mr. Downey paid that off in less than 2 years. And then we rescinded the ticket tax. He also found sponsors over the years. And actually, in order to get the theater to be where it needed to be, put in almost $750,000, $800,000. So his investment was pretty substantial. So for anybody to suggest that he was riding on our coattails the whole time, I think it's a little disingenuous. He also made a personal guarantee, which we were not able to get commitment from the previous potential buyer. Why wasn't it open in 2014? He had to put in digital equipment that cost $60,000 for each camera or projector. Do you remember he took and made it into two theaters? He had to put in the sprinkler system, all new seats and wall covering, small theater created. He put in the marquee, did HVAC, plumbing. So the people that ask, well, what did the people get that made the donation? They got a really nice theater that they've been able to enjoy for the past 7 years. And so I guess the taxpayer benefit is that they had a place to go where actually they pay less for theater. Fox Lake is currently showing Black Adam, and the ticket price for an adult is $8, for a child it's $6, and for a senior it's $6, and Antioch Theater is $5. So even with the $1.50 ticket tax, we're still cheaper for an adult to go to the theater. And so I think it's important for us to understand that this is not an opportunity for someone to take advantage of the village. I think that the residents got something out of it. This is not a loan. We're not hurting the taxpayers, has been said. I think that, there's also been comments that this started back so many months ago. Well, it wasn't until actually the end of April that we were approached by the buyer and seller to say that the lending would be done by the seller. So to suggest that we're moving forward too quickly based on that period of time, please remember that it was because everybody on this board was very concerned about the village owning or being the lender. So, I'm hoping that this isn't a political thing that's going on here. I think we need to vote on it, as Trustee Bluthart stated. We all have approved the ticket tax, simply moving it over to the new buyer. And I think we should support this and vote on it and make it happen so that the theater survives. That's all I have.
Thank you. All right, I will, so one more time around the horn. And then they call a vote. So trustee Pierce? You have
No more
anything?
comments.
All right, trustee Mason?
Also, other tax.
Trustee Peterson? I just want to do something called other than tax, like
Yeah.
a rebate
Thank you.
a rebate agreement or something.
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to reiterate that this is a user rebate.
Rebate, that's a good thing.
It's a user rebate that
That's why you're younger.
that the public at large, the village residents are not going to be burdened with this. It is your decision to go to that theater and see a movie or see a show or whatever they're going to put on that stage. And all of us who live here are going to reap the benefits of having a theater that's open and not shuttered. That's all I have.
Thank you. Trustee Luther?
I'll just reiterate that I just want to see this passed. I want to, it's just a, I think it's a no-brainer to me, but obviously there's some issues that are popping up now. I just want to reiterate that I just think it's a good thing for the village to have this go into effect.
Trustee Berman?
No further comment.
Trustee Dominiac?
No other comment.
All right, Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Pierce,
Aye.
Mason,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Luther,
yes.
Berman,
No.
Dominic.
Yes.
5 voting yes, motion carries. All right. Next item on the agenda is the administrator's report. One thing I wanted to mention before Jim does is I wanted to, and I think Chief Gutchow is going to get up here is, as most people know, we had an unfortunate incident at the high school last week. And I just want to commend the school, the police, the surrounding communities, and thank them for coming in to, what was essentially a prank, but treated as a very much real and live event. And I was there and saw the response. So again, I want to thank them for all the training, and hopefully we never have to deal with that on a real basis, but it showed me that God forbid something like that happened, we're prepared for that. So again, thank you for that. And Jim, your floor.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to make the board aware that there has been a property, properties that contain acreage. This development just on Main Street here, north of Williams Park, has applied to the county for tax exempt status, meaning they wish to be taken off of property tax rolls. We received notice via an attorney representing Oak Ridge. I think we all, and when I say we all, I mean all taxing districts, including the schools, library, first fire district and township. I think it's in reaction to that, the basis of the request, even though the property owners, the Oak Ridge LLC, a for-profit entity, I believe, they're claiming there's a managing member that's a 501, therefore that would give them a basis for being taken off the tax rolls. I want the board to be aware that we have joined forces with the schools, with the library, with township, with First Fire District. We've decided to pool our resources to have the school district attorney fight this matter with Lake County. We'll see how it turns out. I'll report back at some point in time. Our village council will be monitoring these proceedings. But I think it's something we need to be aware of. It came up rather quickly. We had very little time to react, but we were able to coordinate, and I think we have a good strategy to oppose this type of exemption. I would like to give the floor, or the mayor, would you please give the floor to the police chief? He has a couple of reports, so I'm going to give my time to the chief for a couple of minutes.
All right, start the timer.
Thank you, Your Honor. So just a couple of quick things. First, I just want to make the board aware that likely in December, I'm going to be bringing a small army of new police officers to be sworn in. As you know, the department, like nearly every department in not only Lake County, but the state of Illinois, has struggled with staffing and struggled even more with trying to find qualified applicants and recruits. As I had previously mentioned, we had a very good turnout for our test earlier this summer. As we started conducting interviews, those applicants were swiftly being swooped up by other competing departments that are all competing for a very small candidate pool. We recently went through interviews with the Police and Fire Commission. They went very well. We found a very qualified group of young individuals. And we're fortunate enough to have enough qualified individuals on this list to fill our ranks and bring us up to full staffing as it stands. Recall in the current budget, the board approved the addition of 2 new full-time equivalents for the officers. That will cover those, hires will cover those, in addition to the 3 vacancies that we currently have through attrition. From a budgetary perspective, all of these positions were budgeted. Department is tracking well on budgeting. I had my staff run a 5-year report, and we were tracking right where we normally do in the overall budget. In the things and salaries and benefits line, where that's the same, it's tracking just as well. Hopefully this will help offset the overtime problem that we have. We don't go a day without having to pay out overtime shifts. Anytime somebody is on a day off, training, sick, it results in overtime hire back just to fulfill that. Just to give you a little perspective, as we look at some of the statistics, as we all know, policing isn't getting any easier. We encourage our staff to take time off. We have a staff that is getting more time in grade service. So we've accumulated a pretty significant amount of time off. Currently, we have about 4,300 hours total per year benefit time for officers. Those are 4,300 hours that need to be covered. In addition to those new accruals that we have every year, we currently have about 4,300 hours on the books. What that tells me is the police officers are having a very hard time getting time off that they need. It's difficult to get a day or two, let alone that week that they often require to get some rest. So although it's going to take some time to get these new recruits up to speed, likely a year, go to the academy in January. It's now up to 16 weeks. They'll come back to us for another 12 to 16 weeks of field training. So it's likely going to be about this time next year when they're on their own if they're successful. So I just wanted to make the board aware that if things go well, we should have our staffing back on track. Thanks for the papers. Yeah, apologize, my computer jumped out on me today. I do a PowerPoint. That paper. So I just wanted to come back to the board, just give a little bit of a report on the progress of our parking lot and seek your guidance and input on a potential change. So everything is going very well with the parking lot expansion. Obviously the rain hasn't helped, but as we look at things, administrators had to help us make a couple of changes on the fly. Most of them have been pretty simple, having to add a curb or extend that curb here, add a sidewalk where maybe a sidewalk wasn't originally designed. But as I'm sure you know, when you look at a two-dimensional image on a piece of paper of a drawing, things look a little bit different than when they're actually beginning to be constructed. So if you recall, when the original plan was proposed, we came up with the idea of having the front of the police department, which faces Orchard, have a fence or a fence with some masonry pillars. Through discussions, the board thought that a brick wall would give a better aesthetic appearance to the site. But now that we're seeing how it is being built, we've run into some design challenges with it. The cost of the wall is quickly exploding just due to the fact of how it's going to have to be constructed. We have ordered a 7-foot anti-climb fence, which can be found on, and what it's going to look like is found on the 4th page, fifth page. Essentially, it's a 7-foot fence with a turned out radius that's going to make it a little bit more difficult to climb. As we spec'd out the fence for order, we quickly learned that it's only available in 6, 7, and 8-foot heights, which means if we construct a wall, we're going to have to order a 7-foot panel, cut about 2/3 of it off, and just dispose of that. So there's a cost inefficiency there. But if you go back to the first page, that would be standing in the current public parking lot. And I think what we all envisioned when this project was conceived is that wall would come off the front corner of the parking lot and kind of extend back towards Main Street. But the parking lot actually runs much closer to Orchard Street than I initially thought it would. If you go to page 2, that kind of gives you a visual of how the parking lot is going to extend beyond the building. And if you go to page 3, you can see the curb line, and at the end of that long board that you're looking at, that would be essentially where the wall would be placed. So it's gonna look a little odd, I think, just sticking out in the middle of the we'll call it the yard, so to speak. That area beyond the wall would be green space. The board had talked about constructing a potential memorial monument in that area at some point. But by setting the wall out, there really isn't a lot of area left. It's gonna take up a lot of real estate for us. If we wanted to conceive some sort of memorial in the future. If you go to the following page, once again, I think that brings a little perspective to how far out that wall is gonna come from the front of the building. It's nowhere near the corner, so you're gonna have a steel fencing that's gonna run the perimeters on the east and west side of the property, and then just kind of out of the blue, you're just gonna have this large concrete wall with a very small fence on top. Also, as we started to look at how the wall be constructed, it would be capped with a steel fence placed on top. One of the primary goals of constructing this enclosed parking lot was to improve our perimeter security of the building itself. But we would construct a masonry wall that's going to be approximately 4 feet with a some sort of limestone or curing cap, which is going to be a real easy thing for somebody to hop up onto. Then they have a very short steel fence, talking about 2.5 feet that they would have to get into the property. So I think the wall itself is going to reduce the security factor of the parking lot itself. So I would just ask that perhaps the board reconsider the actual final design of that area of the fence. Whether we go with just a simple fence itself and just have it match around the perimeter of the property, or perhaps go back to square one where we got some masonry pillars, which are kind of depicted on the very last page, combined with a very similar fence. You'd have something similar to that with maybe a little bit different cap on top. But just wanted to kind of throw it out there and just see what the board's thoughts were.
All right, thank you.
Jeffrey, looking for feedback right now, or do you want me to send you a follow-up right now? Okay, that must mean we have contracts to sign to look at. All right. Any trustee on this side? Trustee Pierce?
Yes, Your Honor. One thing that's come up to me time and time again this summer is the condition of the sidewalks in the village, both downtown and in areas where people are walking. There appears to be a lot of heaving, a lot of cracking, a lot of trip hazards. I know our public works is working hard to replace the sections of sidewalks they can replace, but I'm concerned with the what's happened to our downtown sidewalks. I know we're working on beautification, but I'm also concerned about the safety of our residents. I'd like the village, as they do budgeting next year, to budget in a plan to have all our sidewalks reviewed and possibly then develop a plan to bring our sidewalks up to safe standards. I know it's hard in the north with the raising and lowering of the soils and stuff, but we owe it to our residents to make sure they can walk safely without tripping and falling everywhere they go, breaking their ankles.
Sure. Do you have any consternation or concern about them changing the plan for this, eliminating the wall and just putting the fence by the parking, or I believe the pillars in between potentially? Do you have any concern about that, Trustee Pierce, changing?
Well, unfortunately, I don't have the display, the PowerPoint, so.
Okay, all right, and you could, make sure you get that, and then you can send.
Yep.
Chief, okay, thank you. Trustee Mason.
Yeah, if you look at, I get 2 points to the fence. If you look at most police departments, they're designed, second to the last page, with this type of fencing. The chief and I talked in detail. If I know some of the trustees want to put shrubbery in front of it. The problem with shrubbery in today's society You got bad guys that sit there and hide behind the shrubbery and do bad things. That's why you get open fencing. And the idea with the open fencing and to keep the cost down would be open fencing with camera systems to protect our police officers. The one in the very last page, when you get the pillar in the middle, pillars in the middle, and it deletes the purpose of easy to climb over. So that's the only one thing about it. That's the area where, okay, let's pick a place to climb over. That's the easiest place because it has no protection at the top. Unless they did something to protect it at the top, it's an easy place to climb over. If I was a bad guy, that's what I'd pick to climb over. So I don't like the last page. That's the second to last page. If you go on the internet and look at police parking lot protection, you're gonna find most every fence like this cambered in every city and town.
Thank you, trustee Peters.
Well, obviously, what we want most of all is safety for our officers, so just the fence would be fine with me.
Trustee Bluthart.
Either is fine with me. I mean, obviously, you wanna have it look good in the front, but if it's a safety concern, trustee Masek said, then those pillars would not be a good option, but if those can go and you can do it safely and you're fine with that, then I have no problem with it.
Trustee Berman.
As was stated, safety is whole point of this for our officers. So I think that we need to make the change to the design that's going to be the safest and keep our police officers safe.
Thank you, trustee Dominiac.
I'll admit, I thought we were doing the last page, so when you said we were doing a whole wall, I thought, well, I haven't been at that, not at that meeting. You know, I like the look of that. I think the discussion about that was, you know, it's right there on Orchard where there's a lot of traffic. I don't know if you can do one on each corner, but you know, put something on the top, but otherwise I can go either way. I do think though, we do have to have some kind of landscaping there, otherwise it's just gonna look, you know, and I think you can be creative with your landscaping. The bad guys can't hide.
All right, well, thank you, Chief Betchow. Anything else from the administrator? All right, anything from the village clerk?
Just a reminder that leaf vacuuming starts next week and runs for 4 weeks during the month of November and is weather permitting. So if there's rain or snow, the vacuum truck can't pick up the leaves, it'll be there.
All right, I'll wait for my emails to start about when my leaves get picked up. All right. Do we have any trustee reports? All right. If not, if there's no executive session, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So second.
Hold on. Motion trustee Dominiac, second trustee Peterson, roll call please.
Pierce,
Aye.
Mason,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Luther.
Yes.
Berman,
Yes.
Minnick,
Yes.
All right, 6 voting yes, motion carries. Meeting's adjourned at 7:54.